I now recognize myself for an opening statement. As we approach the 19th consecutive year of United States military operations in the Middle East, our country and this committee continue to build a better understanding of the long-term health effects the service has placed on the men and women in uniform who serve there. Beyond the immediate threat to their lives inherent in combat operations, their new environment was filled with dangers like dust, debris, brought about by large sandstorms and often exacerbated by military and regional burn pits filled with black plumes of smoke. These plumes would regularly close in on their sleeping quarters on base or around them as they went about their jobs every day. Whether they were fixing aircraft on a flight line, back in the Command Operations Center providing intelligence reporting, or clearing buildings, these burn pits indiscriminately exposed our service members to many unknown hazards. On my own staff, I have a Marine veteran that spent the first month of his deployment driving a large dump truck-styled military vehicle across a large base in the Al-Anbar province of western Iraq. And he's explained to me that every day during this assignment, he and his cohorts set out to pick up large Connex boxes filled with unknown materials to be driven to the burn pits on base. They average between 8 and 10 Connex boxes per day, each one filled and brought to a burn pit for dumping. Every time they dumped a full container, dust would fill the air as the items dropped more than 10 feet into the ground. They were not provided masks, and seldom did they wear gloves. And just a few hours after filling these pits, they and their cohorts would see black smoke hover over the base. They would also perform on-base fuel runs, again exposing themselves to the toxic fumes from JP-5 jet fuel without masks or gloves to protect their skin from irritation. This is just one story from one person, but it cannot be stressed enough that scores of thousands of our service members were exposed to these airborne hazards. Many of our service members knew that being so close to these burn pits was hazardous, yet we continued to burn them until 2011. Now many people are saying this issue is the Agent Orange of the post-9/11 generation, and stories from across the country and world seem to agree. We are now seeing young, healthy veterans in their 20s and 30s suddenly debilitated by cancers they would not reasonably contract unless they were heavily smokers or deep into old age. We know this, and yet we still see people who don't receive disability benefits. If you're too sick to work, you rely on these disability benefits to pay the bills. Not only that, Service Connection is often the gateway to VA health care. I don't want to see veterans with a mountain of private medical bills because they can't get their treatment in the VA. Today, I want to hear from VA what we can do to serve these veterans. I understand it's difficult to create a one-size-fits-all solution for toxic exposure when science is lagging behind. But what we cannot do is continue to delay and deny while veterans suffer with service-related diseases. Earlier this month, the National Academies released their latest report. Unfortunately, the report couldn't say for certain which diseases are linked to burn pit exposure, but they did reach some conclusions about symptoms. They found that chronic persistent cough, shortness of breath, and wheezing were associated with airborne hazard exposure. What I want to understand is what we can do today. The National Academies has recommended a number of next steps we can take to move the ball forward. I thank the National Academies for their research and for being here today, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on how to prioritize future research and what short and long-term studies might yield. I also want to hear from VA how we can bring more burn pit exposed veterans into the VA, whether there are changes to law in Congress that we need to enact or policy changes that VA can provide. I don't want to see veterans turned away from the department. By the end of this hearing, it is imperative that we leave here with a better understanding of where VA currently stands in addressing disability assistance for our veterans who have been exposed to airborne hazards in this theater of operation, and the role that Congress can play. I will now turn it over to Ranking Member Bost for his opening comments. Mr. Bost, you're recognized for 5 minutes.